When you think heavy iron from the old days, you probably picture bulldozers and graders. But American ingenuity produced some truly wild machines that looked like they came from science fiction. From self-propelled monsters that walked on giant feet to electric-wheeled behemoths that defied logic, these engineering marvels moved mountains and built America. 10. Barber Greene Model 879 Asphalt Paver. Back in 1936, paving roads was backbreaking work done mostly by hand. Then Harry Barber of Aurora, Illinois, sketched out something nobody had seen before. The Barber Greene Model 879 transformed the industry. This wasn't just another piece of equipment, it was the machine that invented modern road building as we know it. Before Barber's contraption came along, crews mixed and placed asphalt in separate operations that took forever and produced bumpy, inconsistent surfaces that needed constant repair. What made the 879 special was Barber's floating screed technology, which he developed alongside his son Ashley in 1933. The screed rode on runners that traveled over the prepared base, using a tamper bar to create uniform material density while the floating design smoothed everything out. Harry Barber filed for patent number 2,138,828 on April 10, 1936, and when it was granted on December 6, 1938, it became the blueprint for every asphalt paver built since. The 879 featured a hopper where dump trucks deposited hot mix, a conveyor system that moved material to an auger, and that revolutionary floating screed at the back. By 1940, Barber Greene upgraded the 879 to the 879A model, and this machine became the worldwide standard for asphalt paving until the mid-1950s. Every major highway project, airport runway, and city street in America during that era was likely paved with one of these machines. The company, founded in 1916 in Aurora, Illinois, by Harry Barber and William Greene, started out making conveyors and bucket loaders, but this paver made them legends. When commercial air travel took off in the 1930s, demand for smooth, high-quality pavement exploded, and the 879 was there to meet it. Today, every paver on the market still uses Barber's basic principles, making this one of the most influential construction machines ever built. 9. Shield Bantam M47 dragline. During World War II, most construction equipment manufacturers were busy building tanks and weapons. Not Vern Shield of Waverly, Iowa. In 1942, this farmer-turned-inventor built something in a barn that would reshape the mobile crane industry. Vern needed a small dragline for his family's lime quarry, but couldn't afford the big commercial units. So he did what any self-respecting Midwesterner would do. He built his own from scrap metal and salvaged parts. That first machine worked so well that his brother Wilbur joined him, and they knocked out 9 more Bantams in that same barn. The Shield brothers saw opportunity when massive quantities of military surplus trucks flooded the market after the war ended. They bought hundreds of Army Deuce and a half trucks and half tracks for cheap and mounted their compact draglines on them. The M47 model, introduced in 1947, could handle a quarter-yard bucket and was perfect for small contractors, farmers, and municipalities that needed versatility without breaking the bank. These machines could work as draglines, shovels, backhoes, or cranes by swapping out attachments. The rugged military carriers gave them mobility that traditional crawler-mounted excavators couldn't match. In 1946, the brothers incorporated as Shield Bantam Company and opened a proper factory in Waverly to mass-produce their machines. By the time they sold to Coring Company in 1963, they'd built an estimated 11,000 Bantams. At one point in 1956, with over 1,000 cranes sold in a single year, Shield Bantam claimed to be the world's largest producer of truck-mounted cranes. Not bad for a design that started in a barn next to a lime pit. The Bantam's success proved that innovation doesn't require massive factories or engineering degrees. Sometimes it just takes a practical farmer who refuses to pay retail prices. Before we move on to the next one in the list, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you're enjoying this content so far, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch these videos without subscribing. Imagine what we could accomplish if everyone subscribed. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. Thanks to all of you who do. 8. Athey force feed. Loader Model 712. Here's a machine that looks absolutely ridiculous until you see it work. The Athey force feed loader resembled a mechanical centipede with a conveyor belt for a spine. Athey Products Corporation of Chicago developed these specialized loaders primarily for road maintenance work, though the company's roots went back to 1922 when it was incorporated as Athey Truss Wheel Company. The Model 712, which became their most popular configuration, had rotating paddle wheels at the front that literally scraped material off the ground and fed it onto a long conveyor belt. Picture this scene from rural America in the 1950s through 1970s. A motor grader pulls shoulder material into a neat windrow alongside the road, creating a long pile of dirt and gravel. Following behind comes the Athey 712, crawling forward with its paddle wheel spinning, scooping up that windrow and sending it up the conveyor belt into a dump truck backing alongside. The truck driver has to drive in reverse to keep pace with the loader, making the whole operation look like some kind of bizarre construction ballet. State highway departments loved these machines because one crew could move miles of ditches and shoulders in a single day. The 7 to 12 designation indicated it could move material at speeds ranging from 7 to 12 miles per hour depending on conditions. Early models used Ford six-cylinder engines with hydrostatic drive systems and variable speed controls. They dominated the force-feed loader market for decades, and their crawler assemblies were also widely used on various dump wagons throughout the construction industry. The company eventually failed in 2001, with the force-feed loader line being purchased by Lee Boy Manufacturing. If you drive past a state highway crew today and see them pulling ditches with what looks like a mobile conveyor belt eating windrows, that's the direct descendant of Athey's strange but effective design. 7. Leslie Brothers Rotary Snow Plow. When railroad companies started pushing tracks through the Sierra Nevada and Rocky Mountains in the 1880s, they hit a problem that no amount of manpower could solve snowdrifts 20 feet deep that could bury entire trains. Wedge plows just pushed the snow to the sides, which worked fine until the drifts got too deep. Then everything ground to a halt. Enter Orange Jull of Orangeville, Ontario, who in 1883 built a prototype of something that looked like it belonged in Jules Verne novel. Jules sold his patent rights to the Leslie brothers Edward and John Leslie, who formed the Rotary Steam Shovel Manufacturing Company in Paterson, New Jersey. The Leslie rotary design featured a large circular cutting wheel mounted horizontally at the front of the machine, spinning like a giant fan blade to chop through snow. Behind it sat a second wheel that threw the cut snow out through an adjustable chute that could direct it to either side of the track. The machines weren't self-propelled. They required multiple locomotives coupled behind to push them through the drifts at a crawl of 1 to 2 miles per hour. Operating one took a crew of 4, a pilot stationed behind the cutting wheel with forward visibility who controlled the entire operation, an engineer who managed the wheel's rotation speed, and 2 firemen who kept the steam boiler fed with enough fuel to power the blades. The first major production model, Northern Pacific No. 2, was built by Cook Locomotive and Machine Works in 1887 and deployed in the Cascade Mountains. By 1925, the American Locomotive Company had acquired the Leslie patents and built rotaries through the late 1940s. These steam-powered beasts weighed over 300,000 pounds, and their cutting wheels could throw snow over 100 feet to the side. The vibration from the spinning wheel was so intense that crews described it as riding inside a jackhammer. Rotary plows became essential to keeping transcontinental railroads operating through winter, and a handful are still maintained in reserve by railroads for extreme conditions. The Southern Pacific famously used them on California's Donner Pass, where they became as iconic as the snow itself. 6. Thew Steam Shovel. While companies like Marion and Bucyrus were building massive railroad-mounted steam shovels in the early 1900s, Albert J. Thew of Lorain, Ohio, saw a different opportunity. He figured there had to be a market for a smaller, more nimble steam shovel that could handle jobs where the 70-ton railroad beasts couldn't go. In 1906, Thew introduced a revolutionary design that competitors mocked as impractical. They called it Thew's merry-go-round. Because of its most striking feature, it could rotate a full 360 degrees on a turntable, something no American steam shovel could do at the time. Thew's innovation went way beyond just the rotating turntable. His shovels mounted on steel wheels driven by the steam engine itself, so they could move around a job site without needing railroad tracks laid down. He used wire rope instead of chains for lifting, which ran smoother and safer over the sheaves. Most importantly, Thew developed a horizontal crowd feature that allowed the dipper stick pivot to slide forward 5 feet on a track mounted to the boom. This let the bucket take a level bite before the lift cable swung it upward, perfect for loading ore at docks where the material needed to be scooped sideways rather than dug from above. The Thew Shovel Company found customers where others hadn't looked: Klondike gold miners who needed portable equipment, irrigation ditch contractors in the West, and street crews who appreciated the horizontal crowd mechanism for prying up old concrete slabs. Thew shovels typically had a half-yard bucket capacity and required only a 2-man crew instead of 3. In 1914, Thew became one of the first American manufacturers to introduce gasoline-powered shovels, adapting quickly to the internal combustion era. While Thew steam shovels worked mines and road cuts well into the 1950s, the company's willingness to innovate early kept them ahead of competitors who stuck with steam too long. Today, restored Thew shovels still demonstrate at equipment shows, and when that turntable starts spinning with the boom extended, you understand why it earned that merry-go-round nickname. 5. Page walking dragline. In 1904, contractor John W. Page invented the dragline excavator specifically for digging the Chicago Canal. Unlike steam shovels that crowded a bucket into material, Page's machine used a different approach. It threw a bucket out on a cable, dragged it back full of dirt, then hoisted it up and dumped the load to the side. The concept worked brilliantly, and by 1912, Page realized building draglines was more lucrative than contracting, so he created the Page Engineering Company. But the real innovation came in 1923 when Page built something that sounds physically impossible: a dragline that could walk. Page's walking mechanism used legs operated by rack and pinion on a separate frame that lifted the entire crane body. The machine would plant its circular base, use the boom and bucket to excavate a work area, then when it needed to move, those legs would extend downward, lifting the whole works off the ground. The body got pulled forward by chains on a roller track, then lowered back down. The whole process looked like watching a giant mechanical spider slowly crawl across the landscape. These walking draglines moved at a pace measured in feet per minute, not miles per hour, but that didn't matter because they could work a huge area from one position. Page also developed the first diesel engines specifically for dragline applications in 1924, giving them more power and reliability than steam. He invented the arched dragline bucket design that's still used today by manufacturers worldwide. Walking draglines became essential for strip mining operations where massive amounts of overburden needed removal. The machines grew larger through the decades, with some models in the 1950s weighing over 8,000 tons and moving over 150 cubic yards per cycle. A walking dragline could excavate 450 tons of material in under 2 minutes when running at full capacity. The mechanical advantage of the walking system meant these behemoths could reposition themselves without needing rail tracks or crawler assemblies that would sink under their massive weight. When a walking dragline moves, leaving those perfectly smooth circular footprints in the earth, you're witnessing one of the most impressive mechanical achievements of the early 20th century. 4. Euclid Model 1 Z Track Truck. George Armington and his 5 sons ran a successful crane and hoist operation in Ohio during the 1920s, but eldest son Arthur kept pushing the company toward earth-moving equipment. In 1924, Euclid introduced some successful scrapers, but Arthur Armington wanted something nobody else was building: a truck designed from the ground up for off-road hauling rather than modified highway trucks that broke down constantly on rough terrain. In January 1934, the Euclid Road Machinery Company in Euclid, Ohio, unveiled the Model 1Z, a 7-yard capacity dump truck that changed the construction industry forever. The 1Z featured a Waukesha 100-horsepower gasoline engine paired with an extremely heavy-duty Euclid rear axle. George Armington Jr., who had a talent for hydraulics, developed the first hydraulic dumping mechanism around 1930, and the 1Z incorporated this technology. What really set it apart were the specially designed 17.5 by 24-inch tires that Euclid developed to handle the punishment of off-road work. Before the 1Z, contractors trying to move material on construction sites used crawler wagons on tracks or regular trucks with steel wheels that either moved too slow or tore up the ground. The 1Z could haul 7 cubic yards at highway speeds over terrain that would destroy a normal truck. Euclid became so dominant that UC became generic slang for any off-highway dump truck, regardless of manufacturer. General Motors bought Euclid in 1953, expanding operations to where Euclid division captured more than half of all United States off-highway dump truck sales. The Justice Department filed an antitrust action in 1959, arguing GM's dominance stifled competition, leading to GM selling the division to White Motor Corporation in 1968. Through multiple ownership changes over the decades, including stints with Daimler-Benz, Clark Equipment, and Volvo, the Euclid name survived. The 1Z proved that purpose-built equipment outperforms modified machines every time, and every off-highway haul truck built since owes its existence to what Arthur Armington and his family created in that Ohio factory in 1934. 3. Marion Model 91, Steam Shovel. The Marion Steam Shovel Company of Marion, Ohio, earned a reputation as one of America's premier excavator manufacturers, and their machines helped dig everything from building foundations to the Panama Canal. But the Model 91, introduced in the early 1900s, represented something special: a full-size railroad-mounted steam shovel that could also operate on crawler tracks. This versatility made it incredibly valuable for contractors who needed to work both on rail lines and across rough terrain where tracks couldn't be laid. Marion was founded in 1884 during the railroad boom that opened the western United States and Canada. The company became such a dominant steam shovel manufacturer that Marion, Ohio, earned the nickname the city that built the Panama Canal, because Marion shovels played such a crucial role in that massive undertaking. The Model 91 featured Marion's trademark rugged construction with a steam boiler powerful enough to swing loads weighing several tons through a full rotation cycle. The dipper could bite into banks, scoop anywhere from 1 to 3 cubic yards depending on configuration, swing the load to waiting railroad cars, and dump it with the pull of a lever. What made the Model 91 historically significant was its crawler track capability. Most steam shovels of the era sat permanently on railroad flat cars and required crews to constantly lay temporary track ahead of them as work progressed. The Model 91 could be converted to crawler configuration, giving it the mobility to work quarries, canal excavations, and construction sites where rail access wasn't practical. Today, one of the few surviving steam shovels on crawler tracks, a Marion Model 91, sits preserved in a field in Leroy, New York, where it was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 2008. This machine dates to either 1906 or 1911 and stands as the world's largest intact steam shovel. Seeing it up close, you understand the raw power these machines represented and why they became the backbone of American construction for over half a century. 2. LeTourneau Tournapull. In 1937, R.G. LeTourneau spent 6 months in a full body cast, recovering from a serious car accident. Most people would have taken that time to rest. Not LeTourneau. He designed a stretcher so he could wheel himself through his Peoria, Illinois factory, and while rolling around observing his operation, he got an idea that competitors said would never work. His rubber-tired scrapers moved lots of dirt, but they were limited by the slow-crawling pace of the track tractors that pulled them. LeTourneau sketched out something that looked absurd: a 2-wheeled tractor unit consisting of a big diesel engine jutting out in front of 2 huge rubber drive wheels with a driver's seat and controls perched on top. People called him crazy. The Tournapull looked like a circus unicycle designed by a lunatic, with no apparent stability or practical purpose. But when LeTourneau hitched it to his carry-all scraper, suddenly that crazy design made perfect sense. The 2-wheeled configuration allowed the unit to swing 90 degrees in either direction while pulling, giving unprecedented maneuverability. It could haul 15 cubic yards of earth at speeds up to 35 miles per hour, far faster than crawler tractors that topped out around 5 miles per hour. LeTourneau's secret was the electric wheel drive system he'd pioneered, using a diesel generator to power electric motors in each wheel hub. Caterpillar refused to build LeTourneau's two-wheeled tractor design, thinking it was impractical, so LeTourneau built it himself. Within 20 years, Caterpillar and every other major equipment manufacturer had adopted similar designs because the Tournapull proved so effective. During World War II, LeTourneau's factory supplied 70% of the earth-moving equipment used by Allied forces, and Tournapulls helped build airstrips and roads from North Africa to the Pacific Islands. The company introduced the TS series overhung Tournapull scrapers in 1954, and Terex continued building them into the 2000s. LeTourneau accumulated 299 patents during his lifetime, but the Tournapull stands as his most recognizable achievement, the machine everyone said couldn't work that ended up changing the entire industry. 1. Bucyrus Class 24. Steam Walking Dragline. When mining companies needed to remove massive amounts of overburden to get at ore deposits, they faced a problem nobody had solved. How do you move a dragline weighing dozens of tons without tracks that sink into soft ground or wheels that bog down? Bucyrus Foundry and Manufacturing Company of South Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which had been building steam shovels since 1880, came up with an answer that sounds impossible. The Bucyrus Class 24 from 1917 sat on massive wooden skids and moved itself across the landscape by using its own bucket and cables to pull itself forward. Picture a machine literally dragging itself across the earth one heave at a time. The skid-mounted design worked through sheer mechanical ingenuity. The entire dragline rested on heavy timber skids that distributed the weight across a large surface area, preventing it from sinking into the ground. When the machine needed to relocate after excavating an area, the operator would swing the boom forward, drop the bucket to dig into the ground ahead, then use the drag cable to winch the entire machine forward a few feet. The skids would slide across the surface, leaving deep grooves in the soil. This process repeated over and over, moving the dragline incrementally toward the next work area. It was brutally slow, but remarkably effective for machines that weighed far too much for any other mobility system of the era. The Class 24 represented the cutting edge of dragline technology before true walking mechanisms became common in the 1930s. These skid-mounted steam draglines could excavate several cubic yards per cycle and work all day as long as the firemen kept the boiler fed. Bucyrus would later pioneer the walking dragline mechanism with shoes and cams, but that technology didn't become widespread until well after World War I. The skid-mounted machines proved the concept that draglines could be mobile without rails or wheels, paving the way for the giant walking draglines that followed. By the 1950s and 1960s, Bucyrus Erie built monsters like Big Muskie that stood 22 stories tall and weighed 13,500 tons. But it all started with those early skid-mounted machines like the Class 24, pulling themselves forward one bucket load at a time across American mining sites. These 10 machines proved that American engineers in the 1900s weren't afraid to try the impossible. From steam-powered rotating shovels to electric-wheeled oddities that competitors said would never work, these bizarre contraptions moved mountains, built highways, dug canals, and cleared railroads. Many innovations from machines like the Tournapull and Barber Greene paver are still used in modern equipment today. The walking dragline, rotary snowplow, and other designs showed that creativity matters more than convention. If you enjoyed learning about these mechanical marvels, hit that subscribe button and check out our other videos on vintage equipment. Thanks for watching, and remember, if it looks crazy, but it works, it isn't crazy.